Echoes of Serenity. Clara stood at the edge of the cliff, her heart racing, and the wind whipping through her hair. She could see the town below, a small speck of light in the distance. The world felt far away here, a place where time didn't matter, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel the crushing weight of her own existence. The past few weeks had been unbearable. After her mother passed away, Clara felt herself slowly disappearing into a sea of endless anxiety, stress, and regret. The grief had settled in her chest like a permanent weight, choking her ability to breathe. She couldn't escape it. Everywhere she went, the shadow of her sorrow followed her. That's when she found the place, the quiet little village up in the hills, far removed from the noise of the world. They called it Whispering Pines, but Clara had her doubts. She had come here searching for peace, but was it truly peace she needed, or simply an escape from herself? At first, the small cabin she had rented had felt like a prison. The isolation was overwhelming. The mornings were still quiet, the nights long and unyielding. But gradually, something began to change. She remembered something her therapist had told her months before. Healing starts from within, Clara. So, with the help of an online meditation course, Clara began to practice every morning, sitting in the center of her room with her legs crossed, eyes closed, breathing deeply. It wasn't easy at first. Her thoughts screamed louder than the silence she was trying to create. But she persisted, pushing through the discomfort, convinced that if she just stuck with it, something might shift. And shift it did. Each day, Clara felt a little more grounded, a little more centered. It wasn't that her pain disappeared, no, that was far from it. But the anxiety that had gripped her like a vice started to loosen its hold, just enough for her to breathe a little easier. She was still grieving, still lost in a world that no longer made sense, but there was a small sliver of calm growing inside her, a light at the end of a long tunnel. And it all began with the meditation. One night, after a particularly long session, Clara stood and went to the window, looking out over the darkened forest. The wind rustled the branches of the trees, creating a soft, soothing sound that filled the room. It was then that she saw him, the man standing in the shadows of the pines, staring directly at her. His eyes were wide, his expression one of pure, silent intensity. Clara's breath caught in her throat, her body freezing in place. Was it real? Was it just her mind playing tricks on her, another manifestation of her grief? She blinked, but when she opened her eyes again, he was gone, vanished into the night. For the next few days, Clara couldn't shake the image of him. Her mind raced with questions. Who was he? Was he a local? A figment of her imagination? Or something more, something darker? The encounter unsettled her, but she couldn't bring herself to leave the cabin. After all, she was here to heal. And yet, the feeling of being watched lingered. Then one morning, as Clara ventured into the small town for supplies, she overheard a conversation in the cafe. Two elderly women were talking, their voices low but insistent. "You know, it's been a long time since anyone's seen him," one woman whispered, glancing around nervously. "Not since the accident, anyway. People still say his spirit haunts those woods." Clara's curiosity piqued. She leaned in closer, pretending not to listen but unable to tear herself away. "The accident," the other woman muttered, her voice trembling. "That poor boy. He was so young, so full of life, until that night. Now they say his soul is trapped in the forest, forever wandering, searching for something he can't have, or someone." Clara's mind raced as she processed what she had just heard. Was this the same man she had seen? Could he really be the spirit of someone who had died so tragically, his soul lingering on in the place where he perished? The thought sent a chill down her spine, but as strange as it seemed, she couldn't deny that something about the encounter felt real. There was no mistaking the look in his eyes. There was a deep sorrow there, a longing that spoke directly to her heart. Clara wondered if, perhaps, she wasn't the only one trapped in her grief, but maybe she could help him find peace. Over the next few days, Clara became obsessed with the idea of the ghostly man. She ventured deeper into the forest, hoping to find him again. She wandered through the trees, calling out softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you there?" she asked, her words disappearing into the wind. And then, just as she had feared, she saw him once more. Standing between two ancient oaks, his face shadowed and unreadable. Clara's heart raced, but this time, she wasn't afraid. She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "I've been looking for you," Clara said softly, her voice trembling. "I don't know why, but I feel like you need something." The man didn't speak. Instead, he reached out his hand slowly, as if beckoning her to follow him deeper into the woods. Clara hesitated for only a moment, then stepped forward, her footsteps steady despite the growing sense of unease in her chest. The man led her through the forest until they reached a clearing, a place that seemed oddly familiar, as if she had seen it in a dream. In the center of the clearing stood an old stone well, its surface worn and weathered by time. The man stopped in front of it and turned to face her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "This is where it happened, isn't it?" Clara asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. The air around them seemed to grow colder, and Clara felt a deep sense of loss, as if the weight of centuries of grief had settled over the place. She knelt beside the well, her fingers brushing the stone. It was then that she realized this wasn't just a place of death. It was a place of unfinished business. "I can't undo what's happened," Clara said, her voice breaking. "But I can help you. I can help you find peace." The man's eyes softened, and for a moment, Clara saw the flicker of something, hope, maybe, or release. Then, with a final look at her, he turned and began to fade into the mist, his form dissolving like a wisp of smoke. Clara stayed by the well for a long time, her heart heavy with the knowledge that some mysteries could never be fully understood. But she knew one thing for sure: her own journey toward healing had just begun. As the days passed, Clara continued her meditation practice, now more committed than ever. The ghosts of her past, both real and imagined, seemed to fade, and with each passing day, she felt the weight of her grief lifting just a little. She realized that she couldn't change the past, but she could shape her future. Change, as she had learned, began from within. And in the quiet of the forest, with the wind whispering through the trees, Clara found peace, not in the absence of pain, but in the acceptance of it. She had found a way to live alongside her grief, to carry it without letting it consume her. The echoes of the past would always be with her, but they no longer defined her. In the end, Clara knew the lesson was simple. Healing was not about forgetting. It was about learning to live with what was and finding the strength to move forward, one step at a time.
Whispering echoes.